Hi, everybody. Welcome to Chapter 5, looking at changes in Australia's health status. Our focus today is going to be on 5.2, and we're looking at life expectancy and various patterns of mortality. These patterns of mortality can include things such as infectious and parasitic diseases, cancers, injury and poisoning, respiratory diseases, and cardiovascular diseases. I would like to mention at the beginning of this PowerPoint, can you please document anything that's printed in green word for word and document anything that's printed in white into your own words, but that will be later on in the PowerPoint as well. So we start off with our key knowledge. So from this PowerPoint, what we're looking to achieve throughout Chapter 5 is build our understanding on the improvements in Australia's health status since 1990 and look at the reasons for these improvements, which focuses on a variety of policies and practice and relates to things such as old public health, the biomedical approach to health and improvements in medical technology, development of new public health, including the social model of health and the Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion, and the relationship between biomedical and social models of health. We're looking at to develop these various key skills. So we're looking to be able to analyze data that shows improvement in health over time and draw conclusions about reasons for these improvements and analyze the strength and limitations of biomedical and social models of health in bringing about improvements in health status. I would like to mention that at any point throughout the video, can you please ensure that you pause and document anything at your own leisure, and please make sure that you have everything printed and up to date as well. So before we actually begin on 5.2, I'd like to actually look at a discussion or sort of a brainstorm to mainly do in your books at the moment. So it's focusing on these 3 points. So since 1900, there has been a change in the patterns of diseases that contribute to higher rates of morbidity and mortality. Lifestyle diseases have replaced infectious diseases as the leading cause of death. So what I'd like you to do is to brainstorm. 1, what is meant by lifestyle diseases and what are infectious diseases? 2, brainstorm on your own a list of infectious diseases and a list of lifestyle diseases. And finally, 3, what factors might account for the change in the patterns of illness? So please do that in your own time as well. So we've got to get in this mindset of why has health status improved over time and why is life expectancy and infant mortality rates improved. So we're looking at why these rates have improved in Australia specifically really significantly over the past 100 or so years. So why is this improved? So make sure you're in that mindset whilst you're actually watching this PowerPoint as well. And when you get yourself in the mindset of thinking, how has this actually improved, and document those types of improvements as well. In your own time as well, once you've downloaded the PowerPoint, can you please look at this article from the Sydney Morning Herald? It's a graph which looks at the probable ways of dying now as compared to 100 years ago. So in your own time, go through, read that, and document your findings as well. Okay, so we begin by looking at life expectancy. Remember to please document anything that's in green, word for word, as their definitions or key understanding of the concept of the actual criteria we're going through. And anything that's documented in white, please do so in your own words. So life expectancy is a common health indicator used to measure health status within countries and population groups. We now know that life expectancy is actually improved over time, with life expectancy in males being 80.9 years and females 84.5 years back in 2015, compared to 53.8 years and 57.5 years for females back in 1900. So we can see that over the past 115 or so years, that life expectancy has dramatically improved, specifically for males and for females as well. What you can see from figure 5.2 is how life expectancy has increased, and the rate or the trend is obviously going in an increasing manner. So you can see overall that from this, that for females, probably all the way through, bar this little period here where it's sort of plateaued, life expectancy is generally improved. And even for males, it dramatically increased for a number of years, plateaued slightly, but still increased through to 2014. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see table 5.1. This looks at infant mortality rates per 1,000 live births, and this looks at from the period of 1912 through to 2015. So what you can see throughout this table as well is obviously on the left-hand side the years, but look at the dramatic amount of decreases occurred over this time as well. So over 100 years, males have decreased from 80 to 3.5, and females have decreased from 63 through to 3. So you can see that dramatically increase, about 76 for males their per mortality rate, and also for females 60. So it has made significant amount of difference, and this can obviously occur through medical technology and obviously different practices that are put in place now that have been able to promote better births for females. So now we're looking at patterns of mortality, and what we're looking at is the causes of mortality rate and how it's changed over time. So we're considering from 1900 through to 2018, what type of patterns of mortality has caused this change to occur. So we've got to get in that mindset as to why. So in doing so, now we're looking at different types of diseases which occurs in patterns of mortality. So we'll start off with infectious and parasitic diseases. So infectious diseases are diseases that can be transmitted from one person to another. This can include things such as measles, hepatitis, it can include smallpox, polio, tuberculosis. It can also include sexually transmitted infections such as syphilis and other venereal diseases. Parasitic diseases occur when parasites such as worms, skin mites, body lice, and protozoa enter the body. Once in the body, these parasites can cause sickness and in some cases death, so more likely it increases the morbidity rates, but it does have some instance in mortality rates as well. Infectious and parasitic diseases were the most common causes of death in Australia in the first part of the 20th century, and this contributed to 13% of all deaths. And the reason being is because that living conditions at that time were vastly different. So water and food supplies were often contaminated and rubbish littered the streets. And public facilities such as sewage disposal, safe water, and controls over food supplies were not well established. So that's the reasons why that occurred and had a significant amount of percentage as to mortality rates back then. If you refer to figure 5.5, this can look at obviously the deaths of children aged 0 to 4 from 1907 through to 2000. And what we can see over time is that significant dip in mortality rates as well. So now we look at cancers or neoplasms. So cancer is an abnormal growth of cells. And so the term cancer is actually used to describe a collection of these cells that grow and potentially spread throughout the body. So the reason why cancers increased significantly in the mortality rates throughout the 20th century were that due to things such as lung cancer from smoking, cigarette smoking, death rates peaked during that period of time, and especially peaked throughout the 1980s. So during the 1980s, for males, cancer death rates peaked at around 290 deaths per 100,000 population, and then fell from 240 to 247 deaths per 100,000 in 2000. This obviously decreased because rates of male smoking decreased as well. But again, it is a leading cause of mortality rates as well. So now from cancer, we look into cardiovascular diseases as well. So if you refer to figure 5.7, you can look at how cardiovascular diseases change the patterns of mortality. So cardiovascular diseases are also referred to circulatory diseases, just to let you know, and they affect the heart and blood vessels. So they can include things like heart attack, angina, stroke, and high blood pressure, as well as other diseases. So what actually occurs through cardiovascular diseases is they interfere with how the blood is circulated throughout the body. So this can put impact on the heart as well as other blood vessels. If you look at figure 5.7, you can look at the rate of you can look at the age standardized death rates for cardiovascular diseases by sex and by year. And this looks from 1907 through to 2013. And we can see that through around 1960, 1970, that it started to peak, especially for males and females, and now has steadily declined as well throughout the years. So obviously there's been an improvement in that. So now we move on to respiratory diseases, which also refers to figure 5.9. So respiratory diseases are diseases that affect the lungs and other parts of the body that are involved with breathing. So this can include things such as pneumonia, influenza, asthma, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. Pneumonia and influenza were the major causes of death for respiratory diseases in 1907, but were then replaced by deaths from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease by 2000. Apart from 1919 Spanish flu influenza pandemic, death rates from respiratory diseases fell dramatically across the century, and by 2000 were less than 10% of were less than 10% of 1907 levels. So if you look at 1907 levels throughout the figure 5.9, you can see that there's a major spike and then again a steadily decrease throughout the years. Now this is obviously different now, obviously with the coronavirus going through, and we can obviously see that that is probably going to match or go around the sort of the midpoint of the Spanish flu influenza. So it's significant times at the moment also. Finally, we look at injuries and poisoning. So injury and poisoning, such as car accidents, suicide, assault, consuming poisons, drowning, burns, and falls, are what includes the sort of definition for mortality rates due to injury and poisoning. So since 1900, death rates for injury and poisoning more than half for both males and females. And the reason for this rapid decline occurred throughout the 1970s. So again, things such as motor accidents were high during the 1970s or around that sort of period of time because there was no introduction of seatbelts. However, during the 1970s is when they introduced the first seatbelt to be put into cars, and that actually dipped the amount of deaths due to car accidents throughout the 1970s and then from through to 2000. So another statistic about that was death from motor vehicles were at the highest in 1970, around 49 deaths for males per 100,000 population and 18 per 100,000 for females. These death rates decreased to 14 and 6 per 100,000 for males and females respectively by 2000. So you can see how this number has allowed for the amount of decrease in deaths due to car accidents as well. What you can see in this table here is obviously diseases common in the early 20th century and then diseases common in the late 20th century. So we can see that on our left-hand side, that infectious diseases such as smallpox, polio, tuberculosis were our main causes of mortality rates. You've got parasitic diseases, respiratory diseases such as pneumonia and influenza, and injuries. So injuries due to war and work-related accidents were the major causes during the early 20th century. Now we look on the right-hand side and we can see a significant difference. And the reason being is because these infectious diseases and parasitic diseases on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, now we're looking at things like lifestyle changes. So in the late 20th century, we can look at the infectious diseases. The main causes of mortality are HIV and AIDS or hepatitis C. For parasitic disease, we have cancer, so lung, stomach, and cardiovascular diseases, so heart attack, stroke, angina, and high blood pressure. Respiratory diseases, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and then injuries, so car accidents. Although they're continuing to decrease, do happen to have quite a significant impact on mortality rates. So mortality rates have improved due to less contamination of food and water supplies. So overall, in our country, being a first world country now, we have more, we have clean water and we have accessibility to a variety of food sources. Therefore, our mortality rates have decreased, and the quality of food is obviously improved over time as well. We have a better rubbish disposal system. We have monitoring of water systems as well. We now have an established sewer system as compared to 1900s. We have increased in medical technology as well. So surgeries, MRI, X-ray, chemotherapy have improved, and as a result, has allowed for mortality rates to decrease. And we have a number of vaccinations. So diseases such as polio have been eradicated now throughout the country, as compared to back in 1900s when it was quite apparent. So that goes hand in hand with obviously medical technology improving. And we also have an emphasis on health promotion as well. So we do look at ensuring that we are eating healthier as compared to back in 1900s. So a couple things that I'd like you to do. So firstly, I'd like you to use the internet to locate a range of images that reflect the living conditions in the first half of the 20th century, and then use these images to create a photo story or collage that links living conditions to the type of diseases that were common at the time. And I'd like you to look at the changes in health status research tasks, and that's also available on Sector. I'd like you to complete activity 5.2, which is on textbook page 170, and complete questions 1 to 16 as well. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening and watching as well. Can you please make sure that you do happen to give me any feedback that you may require, and please feel free to message me if you need any clarification on anything as well. Have a great day, and I will see you shortly. Thank you.